This happened earlier last year, and it still fucks me up to think about it too much. First, a little backstory to explain. I'm a delivery driver for Uber Eats, and I've been doing it as a side gig for the past year or so to earn some extra money. Also, I'm a girl. Anyway, yeah, Uber Eats. It's a super chill job, although the pay is definitely not ideal, especially at night. Normally, any pings I get after 10 p.m. are just shitty fast food orders to customers where the chances of being tipped are even lower than normal, which is pretty low. I would say 2 in 10 people tip on Uber Eats. Whatever. Late night deliveries are rarely profitable, which is why I would barely do them. However, on this night last year, there was a bonus going on. Reach 15 deliveries in a certain time frame to get an extra $75. Music to my ears. When that's the case, late night deliveries rock because there's no traffic and it doesn't matter where you're picking up from. McDonald's schmcdonald's. Just bring on the bonuses. The faster you can get them done, the faster you get to go home and knock out. Open roads all the way it works for me. I was on a roll and finished my last Mickey D's run at 2:30 in the morning. I cashed in my bonus and called it a night. For context, this took place in downtown San Diego. Downtown San Diego has fun restaurants and clubs at the core, but as you branch out it gets a little more seedy. Once you get past 16th Street, it starts to get really sketchy. Lots of homeless camps and the works. I actively try to avoid that area, but in order to get back home and on the freeway, I had to pass through that neighborhood. One more little piece of info. I drive a 2002 shitty Ford Focus and nothing's automatic. In order to roll the windows up or down, you have to reach over and crank the lever. Because it's a hassle to roll them up and down manually each time, when I do deliveries, I usually just keep both my windows rolled down because it's easier to pick up and deliver through the windows. This night, fuck me, I had my windows down as usual. I was planning to roll them up before I passed through 16th Street, where the homeless camp was, but I didn't get that far. As I turned down a side street heading towards the main drag, up ahead I see a man in one of those orange reflective construction vests, standing out on the side of the road. There's always some construction going on downtown, and it's pretty common for it to happen at night, so I didn't really pay much attention. As I get closer though, the man runs into the middle of the street, waving his arms signaling to stop. I start to slow down, thinking he's going to direct traffic or reroute me or something. I brake to 10 miles per hour, then 5, leaving distance trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do. He breaks out into a jog towards my car, and stops directly in front of it, blocking me and my car from moving forward. Immediate unease. This is weird. I'm wishing my windows were rolled up. It's 3 a.m. on a dark street, and there's not a soul around except for me and this dude. People talk about fight or flight, and I've always wondered how I would react in a situation that warranted a similar response. Now I know my reaction is to freeze, because as I was slowing down, it hit me 5 seconds later than it should have. This guy was not a construction worker. He had on a hard hat and a vest, and the creepiest smile I've ever seen in my life. At first, I thought he was just smiling to be friendly, but smiling to acknowledge someone longer than a few seconds is super unnerving. Try it right now. Count to 5 in your head while grinning and you'll see what I mean. That's what this guy was doing. Now that he's in front of me, I can tell that he's homeless. That or just, I don't even know. Older guy, I would guess in his 60s, but homelessness has a way of making everyone look old, so who knows really. He's just staring at me now, wide-eyed and smiling, all teeth. Honestly, his smile and mannerisms, the best way I can describe it is Twisty from American Horror Story. Literally though, this guy looked insane. I obviously should have reversed, but my brain was panicking and I couldn't think that fast. I'm frozen in my car, thinking about how this is how I'm going to die. This whole time he's not saying anything, just leering. Then, like a ninja, he jumps onto the hood of my car and slams his fists against my hood. I'm frozen in terror just watching this guy. He starts pounding on the hood of my car, crawling around on hands and knees, not saying anything, just crawling and staring at me. That was the most terrifying part. He never broke eye contact once during all of this, and he never stopped grinning. The thought of my windows being open made me want to throw up, but at the same time, breaking eye contact and moving to roll them up felt scarier, like if I made sudden moves or looked away, he would try to come inside the car. He never said a word. I think it would have been less scary if he had said something, but he never did. Just pounded his fists on the car and stared. In all reality, this whole encounter probably lasted all of 15 seconds, but it felt like days to me. I'm freaking out, and before I can gain the sense to do anything remotely intelligent, I see headlights in my rearview mirror coming up behind me from down the street. The man sees them too, and in an instant, he jumps off my car and breaks off into a run behind me, heading towards the new car. Jesus Christ. I floor it and don't look back until I'm halfway home on the freeway, and at this point it's all adrenaline. For a long time after that, I stopped delivering at night. I sure as hell don't go into that section of downtown anymore. I take the longer route home, and I don't drive with the windows down at night if it's in an area even remotely run down. What I realized from this is how naive I can be, to just automatically trust and obey someone just because they have a uniform. I didn't even question slowing down at first, even though the situation was sketchy as hell. The opposite, actually. My mind was comforted by the fact I found somebody trustworthy on the road. Subconscious thoughts went, "Oh nice, a public servant doesn't want me making a wrong turn." By the time I stopped, it would have already been too late if this guy wanted to attack me. I shudder thinking about it. I calmed down eventually by reassuring myself that this was probably just a crazy dude on drugs who meant no harm. Hopefully that's the case, and for my own peace of mind I'm going to believe that it is. But what got me is the fact that this guy was dressed as a road worker on the road, and deliberately behaving at first in a way to lead me to believe that he was one. Why else wear that getup? And why was he trying to pull cars over? Just to freak people out? I don't know the answer, and I'm glad I didn't find out what it was that he wanted from me. Yikes. This is a long one, but it was so bizarre I think it's worth telling. I wanted to post it because this person recently tried to friend my now husband on Facebook, and it brought back crazy memories and I need to vent it out. I got married at 18. I was a pretty book-smart kid, but lacked street smarts. By the time I turned 20, my now ex-husband and I had moved into a rental property in a pretty nice suburb outside Chicago. In the basement of the house was a big mother-in-law suite, where a good male friend of ours, Nick, lived as well. I was about halfway through nursing school at this time. This particular semester of nursing school, I had a very early clinical rotation once a week. I was 21 at the time. I'm not a morning person, so in order to maximize the amount of time I spent asleep, I started loading all my stuff into the car the night before. Bags, books, even my purse. Again, street smarts lacking. One particular night before clinicals, I asked my ex-husband Bobby to get a book for my car. Bob does, but forgets to lock the door. The next morning when I get to my car, I note that my purse is gone. I ended up filing a police report. I was most concerned because I had just gotten this new job as a nurse's aide at a hospital, and I had my social security card still sitting in my wallet. Strike 3 for street smarts. Almost immediately, though, after the theft, strange things started to happen. We started getting ding-dong ditches at all hours of the day and night. Someone vandalized mine, Nick's, and Bob's cars with strange graffiti, Nazi swastikas, hangmen, and the like, egged our house, and slashed Nick's tires. At first, we chalked it up to the neighborhood pranksters, but when we started having damages that cost some decent money, we called the police. Not to mention, one day when Bob was mowing the lawn, he noticed piles of cigarette butts outside the bedroom window. The police came out, but pretty much did nothing but take a report, and told us to perhaps invest in car alarms and some brighter floodlights for the driveway. A few weeks after this, at 2:30 in the morning, I get a call on my cell. It was the police in a neighboring town. They had picked up someone who had my ID on him, someone named Craig J. When they asked why he had someone else's ID on him, he claimed that I was his girlfriend. The cop called me because my name had popped that I'd filed a police report for theft. I assured the cops I'd never heard of him before, and was told that I could pick up my ID at the police station within the next few days. Things really started to escalate at this point, but I still didn't make the connection that perhaps these incidents were related. I started getting strange messages on MySpace. This was in 2009, as well as on Facebook, from clearly fake accounts with long-winded messages that made no sense. This person started messaging friends of mine as well. I deleted MySpace and blocked the person on Facebook, but new accounts kept getting created. Somehow this person got a hold of my email address and started sending emails as well. I had no idea who this person could be, but they seemed to know details about me that indicated that this was either someone I knew or knew someone that I knew. The messages weren't overtly threatening, but creepy enough to where I was starting to become uncomfortable. One night, my friend Lauren and I were sitting on the couch watching TV. Bob, Lauren's husband, and a few other friends had gone out for the night. As we're sitting around chilling, we hear something that sounds like someone shaking the garage door. It was an attached garage. I go and check the garage, but nothing seems to be out of the ordinary. We had occasional issues with raccoons, so I chalked it up to that. But the noise keeps continuing. Lauren and I are getting freaked out at this point. Now understand the layout of the house. It was a modern-style ranch house with no upstairs. The garage sounds now moved to the kitchen window, a distinct sound of someone knocking or scratching hard on the windows. We call our husbands, who didn't answer. At this point, we debate calling the police. What if it's an animal or tree branches? We don't want to seem stupid. As we debate, I see Lauren's face go sheet white and look right past me. I spin around and I can see the locked handle of the front door wiggling. We were seated near the kitchen, but we both jump up. Lauren grabs a knife from the butcher block on the counter. I grab a small hammer from the junk drawer. We book it to the back of the house where the bedrooms are, cell phone in hand, and lock ourselves in one of the bedrooms and call the police. The dispatcher tells us to stay on the line, move furniture in front of the door if possible, and the police are on their way. We shove a dresser in front of the door, knife and hammer in hand. We agreed if this fucker was going to come in, he might be bigger or stronger than us, but he's not going down without a fight. We plan. If he gets in before the cops, I go for the head with the hammer, and she goes for the gut with the knife. The cops show up banging on the door, shouting police. We can see the red and blue lights through the window. We leave the room, let the cops in, and they find no signs of anyone present or evidence of an attempted break-in. They take a report. In the meanwhile, our husbands finally call us back. They come home and the cops leave. Flash forward a few months. A very close friend of ours, Sean, was renovating his apartment and needed a place to crash along with his girlfriend. Bob and I decided he could stay in the third bedroom of our house. The first night Sean stays with us, we're awakened at 2 in the morning by Sean screaming at someone. Bob and I jump out of bed and rush into the hall and to Sean's room. Sean and his girl are wide awake, lights on and looking totally freaked out. The screen is sliced, flopping in the wind. Sean told us he woke up to someone using what he thought was a knife on the screen and started climbing in through the window. We called the cops and they come out to take a statement. Sean describes the guy as best as he could. A white male, young-looking, semi-shaved head with what looked like darker hair. Cops dust for fingerprints, and they come back as a match for Craig J. Turns out I knew who he was vaguely. He was a year younger than me, and we had gone to the same high school, but I couldn't remember having any significant interactions with him. He lived with his parents only a few blocks from my parents' house. I ended up reaching out to high school acquaintances who knew him, and they remembered him as a nice but odd kid, kind of quiet but definitely on the strange side, who had dropped out of school suddenly before graduation. Upon realizing that Sean had just moved in, the cop makes a statement that chilled us all. He probably didn't realize anyone was staying in this bedroom and thought the room would be empty. Cops go there and arrest him. He suddenly has quite the story to tell them. Him and I were secret lovers. I was ignoring him. We had a relationship. He had also been allowed into my home many times. I'm floored. He gets charged with something like trespassing or breaking and entering, and does light time for it, maybe a month, and has to pay a fine. In the meanwhile, I get a restraining order on him. He gets out and I hear nothing from him. I also develop a completely irrational fear of first-floor windows. Around Christmas of 2010, I'm now 23. I figure the whole Craig thing is in the past. Bob and I decide to divorce, unrelated to this, and go our separate ways, and Nick has long since moved out. We end the lease, and I move to a less desirable suburb, but with an affordable rent. I settle on an apartment in a 4-unit building that had a locked entrance, and the only way in was with a key, or with someone opening the door from the inside. I lived on the 2nd floor. By this time I had graduated and was now a nurse, and was now working in a nursing home. Spring or summer of 2011, it started up again. Calls coming through to me at work, only to have someone hang up. Letters suddenly appeared in the staff-only mailbox, mailed to me with no return address. The strange emails started up again from random accounts. The messages were never overtly threatening, but they were long, way too frequent, way too out there. He spoke to me as if we were long-lost friends and had some sort of connection. I don't think he ever threatened to hurt me, although the cutting into a house with a knife, I don't know what was going through his mind. What I kind of seemed to piece together over the years from all of his rambling is that he had some sort of crush on me when I was younger, although I never remember even speaking to him during high school, and him happening to rob my car was some sort of sign from the universe that we were meant to be together. I called the cops and they basically told me that because there had been no threats, and other than an OOP or a cease and desist, there's not much they can do except watch and wait. This goes on for a while, and finally, one night, I wake up at 2 in the morning to the doorbell ringing. I'm instantly in a panic. I look out the window, and there, illuminated in the floodlight, is Craig. I burst out crying. In my half-awake state, I run across the hall and start banging on my neighbor's door. He was an older divorced guy who lived alone. He goes downstairs and confronts Craig, telling him the cops have been called, and he takes off. I file a report and they claim they'll talk to him, but this only seems to make things worse. Friends I have on Facebook now start getting random messages from Craig, asking about me, telling them he has important information for me. Other times he alternates saying I owe him money and I have a debt I need to pay off. My friends block him as he goes along. Meanwhile, my younger sister is living in the city with a few friends. He somehow finds out where, and drives to her apartment and confronts her while she has people over. She freaks out and they kick him out. They call the cops, who basically again state he didn't commit a crime, but offer us a restraining order. Right after this, another incident. My younger cousin is a high school senior on the cross-country team. He shows up at my cousin's practice, but my cousin has no clue who he is. He starts demanding information on me. The coach gets involved and Craig gets into a fight with him. The cops are called, but he's banned from school grounds and nothing more. He calls the nursing home administrator at my job, asking him to talk to me and that he has important information to tell me. The administrator, my work, was now aware of the situation, tells him not to come onto the property or he'll have him arrested for trespassing. At this point, I'm paranoid beyond measure. Then, just as quickly as it started, it faded off. It's now summer of 2012, and the final caper in this saga. I'm almost 25 now. A friend of mine named Stacy, and incidentally Sean's ex, moved in with me temporarily while she looked for a place. She was dating a new guy, and spent quite a few nights at his place. One day I picked up a double shift, starting at 7 a.m. and ending at 11:30. Stacy texted me around 3:30 stating she won't be home that night and was out with her guy. I arrive home at almost midnight. The first thing I notice is that the door is unlocked. Uneasy, but thinking perhaps Stacy had forgotten to lock it, I cautiously peer inside. I pan my gaze to the kitchen and the living room. I can't shake the feeling that I'm unsettled. Something isn't sitting right. Due to all of these incidents, I've always made sure that one or two lights were on even when we weren't home. I was still not even fully in the door when I noticed that I was staring into a pitch-black apartment, and immediately my brain went into full panic. I'm glad it did. Realistically, Stacy could have forgotten to leave a light on, but my instincts were in overdrive and sounding off 5 alarm bells. My Puerto Rican neighbor, who lived in one of the building units, was well known for his weekend parties, and I could hear a party going on downstairs. I book it down the stairs and bust into the party, and I tell him what happened. He looks at me like I'm crazy, but agrees to come upstairs with me. We get inside and we look around, but we see nobody. I'm starting to wonder if I'm just nuts. Maybe Stacy had her boyfriend over and they left in a hurry, forgetting to turn on the lowlights and lock the door. He agrees with me, and sort of jokingly pulls open the pantry door. What I saw next will never leave my mind. There, crouched inside, is Craig. My Puerto Rican neighbor puts the guy in a chokehold and I call the police. To this day, I have no idea what he planned on doing. The cops come out and he's arrested. Because my neighbor was having a party, he had the door open to the alleyway. Chances are he just walked into the building, and if anyone even noticed, people would just assume he was there for the party. It's more confusing how we got into the apartment itself. My theory is, my roommate at the time was from the country, while I lived in a suburb. It was the type of suburb right on the edge of a major U.S. city, so we always locked our doors and generally kept everything secured as a rule. She was used to leaving her doors wide open, and I honestly think it may have just slipped her mind when she went out for the night. I confronted her about it, and of course she denied it, but that's really the only logical way he could have gotten in. I always locked both the knob lock and the deadbolt whenever I left the house. Unless he was a skilled locksmith, I have no idea how he could have gotten in. I didn't stay alone or go anywhere by myself for a long time after that. I feel that I actually developed a paranoia because of all of this, and was highly suspicious of giving my number or any information out to anyone. He ended up being charged and convicted of aggravated stalking, breaking and entering, and some other charges. I did meet his parents in court, who were both, shockingly, very normal and apologetic people. They tried explaining their son. They claimed he was mentally ill and suffered from bipolar disorder. When he's medicated, he's okay. When he's off his meds, he's nuts. After he served time, I didn't hear from him for years. Not until 2016 when he found me on Facebook. I was much older now, around 29. I replied to him very firmly that any contact would end with the police being called, and that I had no interest in him at all. I blocked him any way I could. Recently he found my new husband on Facebook and friended him. He blocked him as well. To this day I still have paranoia. I had parked my car near a baseball diamond once, and some kids most likely hit a baseball into my windshield and took off. because it had a perfectly baseball-sized spider crack on the glass. Despite it being completely logical that it was most likely a ball, I instantly reverted to, "Oh God, is he back?" I have no idea what happened to him. I'm also now a total psycho about keeping things locked. Twice my life got screwed up because the doors weren't locked. My car door, and most likely my apartment door. I have an acquaintance monitor him on Facebook. His page is not private, and from what I've seen, he appears to go through periods where he's pretty inactive, and then episodes where he's rambling, overposting, oversharing, and acting generally deranged. I believe his parents were telling the truth when they stated that when he's medicated he's okay. Part of me feels a bit bad for him. I'm older now, and I've been a nurse for almost 10 years, some of which time was spent in a psych specialty. The mind is a hell of a thing. Looking back, though, those were some of the worst years of my adult life. He put me through a lot of anxiety and caused a lot of issues for me. I slept with my couch pushed against my apartment door for the next 2 years before I moved out of there. I'm now married, but on nights where I'm home alone, I find myself resisting the urge to stack furniture in front of the doors. One of the other fallouts from this situation, Craig either sold, lost, or gave away my social security card that had been in my purse. Someone tried to file for Medicaid benefits in Arizona using my name and social, as well as obtained a job using my social and failed to pay any taxes, leaving me with a surprise asset freeze by the IRS and a whole financial mess that needed to be untangled before they unfroze my accounts. My credit got extremely messed up for years because of it, and to this day I have a lock on my social security number and monitor my accounts like a hawk. Moral of the story: never leave your purse in the car, and always lock your doors. I'm not going to lie. I basically went to college to smoke weed and go to parties. My full intention was to do just enough to get by while partying as much as I could. Unfortunately for me, I only applied to a few schools and was only accepted to one, a small college in the mountains of New Hampshire. It was very small, around 3,500 total undergrads, and I went not knowing anyone. On the first day, as I was skipping the ice-breaking games and other students were giving tours of the campus to their families before leaving, I wandered down a small path behind the cafeteria towards a small stream I had noticed during the drive-in. I lit a joint and was just meandering around when I noticed another dude a little further down the stream that cut a straightest path through the trees. He was also smoking a joint, I assumed by the way he was holding it. I made my way over to see if I just made my first college friend, and introduced myself. His name was Nate, and he seemed pretty cool. He was smoking some really nice herbs, so I figured I could get along well with him. He stood about 5'5" and was a little stubby, but I remember noticing that he had a really weird laugh, like a nervous type. And whenever he laughed, he'd kind of look off to the side and glance back at me from his peripheral vision. Yeah, I knew it was weird even back then, but the first time I met him, literally the first 30 seconds of introducing myself. But I thought maybe he was just socially awkward, had bad teeth, who knows. I was taught not to judge, and he was otherwise pretty normal. We ended up hanging out pretty frequently, playing video games, drinking, smoking, but other people, especially in my dorm, didn't really seem to take to him. Not that I really felt a strong bond with him either. I didn't. It was a very superficial friendship, built around drugs and debauchery, but I definitely got the sense that my other friends weren't comfortable around him. Then something weird happened, that I've managed to successfully forget about until recently. My heart is pumping out of my chest just typing this. One weekend my roommate was home for a visit, and Nate's roommate was having his girlfriend over, which basically implied in college terms that Nate was staying with me. It seemed automatic. We got trashed and smoked a ton, got pizza and played video games. I was pretty out of it, and we were both sitting in desk chairs in my room passing a ball back and forth. When he handed the ball to me, leaning over towards me in his chair, He put his hand over mine and said casually in a low and steady voice, "I'm going to fucking kill you." Okay, so like I said, we were all sorts of fucked up, but I was definitely freaked out of him. He'd never really been aggressive before, even at his most intoxicated. Certainly he'd never said anything like this before. I've never handled confrontation very well, so all I said was, "No, dude, don't do that, bro," and sort of laughed it off and tried to write it off as a drunk, stoned idiot, playing too much Mortal Kombat. We had a bunk bed set up in the room since it was pretty small, and I was on top. My roommate was a bigger guy, and didn't want to have to climb down to pee in the middle of the night. We had both gone to bed, but my roommate had put up Christmas lights that we just always kept on, strung along the ceiling. I'm half deaf, I should also add, so when I sleep I tend to roll onto my functioning ear to block out sounds or muffle them in my pillow. And this also means I'm a pretty heavy sleeper. Sometime during the night, I woke up feeling a little nauseous and slowly opened my eyes. Nate was standing on the edge of his mattress, holding onto the side railings of my top bunk and staring directly at my face as I was sleeping. What the fuck? My eyes got wide as I snapped awake and sat up. "What the hell, dude?" I said, backing up and bumping my head on the wall behind me. Then he turned his head and gave me that look from the corner of his eyes. The same smile and laugh that freaked me out the first day I met him. He was still holding the railings, standing on the mattress from the lower bunk. His face was lit in weird splashes of color from the Christmas lights. He took one hand from the railing and put his finger to his mouth while smiling and still looking at me sideways, and whispered, "Shh," before hopping down and leaving the room. It was about 3 a.m., and I don't know where he went that night. I never told anyone about that, and pretty much did my best to bury it and never think about it again. I avoided Nate for the rest of the year, making up excuses when he wanted to chill alone, but did end up at the same parties with him a few times. We never talked about that, and he never brought it up. I transferred to another school the following year, not because of Nate or anything, just because of financial reasons, and I did manage to forget about the weird incident. That was 15 years ago. I'm 33 now, and recently got a call from my old roommate from the school in New Hampshire, who luckily remembered my very repetitive phone number. "Man, remember that guy Nate you used to hang out with at the dorms? He killed his 2 friends with a hunting knife and fishing line on a camping trip a year ago. He said he was too fucked up to control himself. He was mixing his meds with booze and drugs, and they said he just lost it. The thing that fucks with me is wondering if he told them he was going to kill them too, and if the last thing they saw was that sideways smile that I saw when I woke up that night."